Hello and welcome to another weekly roundup. I am Disbrew, and we start with the obviously massive news that Microsoft bought Activision. Now, this kind of sent the entire gaming industry into a spin, and it came completely out of left field. They spent $68.7 billion on the acquisition of Activision Blizzard, and honestly, this was really overpaying for it. At the time, the valuation of the company was at $64 a share, and yet Microsoft paid $95 a share for it. This is actually going back to almost the Activision Blizzard's all-time high of around $103 almost a year ago, and since then it's only gone down because of obvious things. Not only have games missed their windows, but also the corporate culture and all the news that came out of that really took a sledgehammer to their stock price. But Microsoft didn't just buy them at the current valuation, no, they valued them at almost their peak of all time. Now, for me, this really shows that this was more about sending a message. They didn't need to overpay for this at all, and if they'd waited a few more months, they probably could have got it even cheaper. But it did have a significant amount of knock-on effects in the industry, the biggest of which was probably Sony losing $20 billion of their share price just overnight. The impact that that will have on the console wars and any sort of future forays into the PC gaming industry, well, people didn't really think that Sony had it in them to face Microsoft's just huge bank balance and fears over losing Call of Duty, which would amount to nearly $260 million a year just for losing the multiplayer, obviously had a massive impact on their potential revenue in the future and thus their stock price. But there was also companies like Capcom, Square Enix and Ubisoft also a massive rise, and they've actually managed to hold those prices. So this wasn't just a flash in the pan news when they actually managed to maintain those prices after all of this time. Now, there's various different theories about why they would have bought this, whether after the sort of the exclusives for Sony, whether this was even aimed at Sony, or whether it's something else. Because one thing that people forget is that Activision Blizzard's main industry, their main revenue-generating source, is actually mobile gaming. Like, Warzone is a significant revenue source for them. It's about 1/6 or 1/7 of their total revenue, but mobile is even bigger, as mobile came in at $2.2 billion, which is around 34% of their total revenue. Meanwhile, console was $1.92 billion and PC $1.72. So mobile was actually not just ahead, but they led the pack by a significant margin. And this goes hand in hand with Microsoft's strategy before of Minecraft Mobile, which is their largest mobile source, or Fallout Shelter, their second one. This is clearly an element that Microsoft want to expand into. So you may well be seeing all of your favorite Blizzard franchises turned into mobile games in the near future, but let's be honest, Blizzard was doing that anyway. But when it comes to exclusive, that's where all the juicy details comes from. And Phil Spencer has spoken at length about where he sees those kinds of going. Game Pass is obviously a massive thing for them, and they definitely want to get Activision Blizzard's 400 million monthly users onto Game Pass themselves, which already has 25 million unique users of its own. So if they can get all those World of Warcraft subscribers over there, that'll be a big win for them. And Game Pass is at the heart of Microsoft's future proposition. Now, no longer will they be keeping their exclusives just for Xbox, but they'll be day one launched on Xbox and PC via Game Pass. And this is actually what Phil Spencer has said his competitors, meaning Sony, will be doing in the future. Now, we know that Sony is coming up with their own competitor for Game Pass, so Sony's exclusives were never going to stay exclusives for PlayStation in the future anyway. It was just about how long were they going to be exclusive before they actually move on to PC by this new service. And if I'm allowed to put my speculation cap on, that's one of the major reasons that I think they did this acquisition. They can use this and Call of Duty and all of Activision Blizzard's other IPs as the sword of Damocles over Sony itself. Because even just a short while ago, Sony was speaking about how they were very happy with their 2-year exclusivity window. But at this point, if they're not going to move into the PC space, then Microsoft will, and Sony will find itself lagging behind. Both of them want to take chunks out of the behemoth, which is Steam, and in my mind, it would be insane for Sony to let Microsoft do that completely uncontested. So while Phil Spencer has said that he won't be moving games which already have a community on PlayStation, therefore games like Warzone are totally safe, I don't think you can say that so much about other IPs, especially Call of Duty multiplayer. The current games won't be going anywhere, but the future games, who knows? And that is the pressure that Sony needs. because Microsoft has a home advantage on the Windows service. They will definitely want Sony to be moving games over there, because obviously Microsoft think they have an easier access to the PC audience than Sony would. But at the same time, Sony keeping a 2-year exclusivity window isn't doing them any favors, and it's definitely costing them a significant amount of PC revenue. So I think there's a deal to be done here. Xbox could easily say, we will continue putting over all of these IPs onto PlayStation, which will be good for you and good for us. And in return, you can actually shorten that exclusivity window a significant amount, but it's worth bearing in mind that this deal, even if it goes through all the government scrutiny, which I'm basically certain that it will, let's face it, they're not a monopoly, and this won't even put them close to being one. Microsoft has said that Bobby Kotick will remain as Activision Blizzard's CEO until the deal is done, and it won't actually go through until June 2023. So if there's any games in the future that are already in the pipeline, they likely won't be affected. This isn't going to affect any of the very close CoDs or Overwatch 2 or anything like that, which are already in the pipeline. So for now, I wouldn't expect anything to change. This certainly won't be having any immediate effect. At the moment, these are two separate companies, and that will remain that way for at least the next 18 months. But as you've seen from the stock prices of other companies, this really shook up the gaming industry, and it will no doubt be having significant news in the future, and I am really, really looking forward to it. Just like Call of Duty and Battlefield that launched at the same time, Halo Infinite launched in a state that wasn't exactly perfect. Big Team Battle is broken and has been for months now, and they've still not done anything about it. But at least they are working on something. The Cashshop. That wasn't predictable. Yes, but at this time they're actually working on lowering the prices due to, well, I was going to say player outrage, but let's face it, it's probably just the data that not as many people were buying them as that they were expecting because of the extreme price that they were. So now not only will we be able to find cheaper individual items on the store, but they will also be separating out items from the bundles on their own, starting from next week. We also found out that those cosmetics will be easier to get, as starting with Season 2, you'll be able to start earning credits in-game via the Battle Pass. I think this is an excellent change, as it's basically accepted in Battle Passes that you earn in-game currency via the Battle Pass themselves, and in fact it normally more than pays for the Battle Pass, so hopefully Halo Infinite takes up literally everybody else who's made one of these kind of systems and follows their lead when it comes to the amount of credits that you'll actually get. All in all, I think this is a good, albeit slow change, but who knows, maybe you'll end up wearing cat ears inside Halo Infinite after all. Dying Light 2 is one of my most anticipated games of the year, and it's releasing very soon on February the 4th. However, this week it actually showed off its quality modes, which will enable you to choose between FPS or graphical quality. This is something that I have been saying that consoles should be able to have for years at this point, and it's good to finally see a game putting the gamers actually in the control seat on this one. You have quality mode, which is there for people who prefer visual experiences. This will turn on things such as ray tracing, significantly improve the quality of the scenes, and have an emphasis on environmental lighting and post-processing elements. Then we'll have performance mode. This is for people who prefer FPS, and if you want smooth gameplay, this is the option for you. Focus on high frame rate, which will be for the PlayStation 60 FPS Plus, and will ensure you have a smooth combat experience while obviously sacrificing some of those graphical elements. And then its final option will be resolution mode, which will show you the game in 4K. And while this was originally supposed to be in quality mode, apparently it was just too much for the console to actually handle, so we had to be separated out so that you could have 4K mode and have this sort of compromise where they still allow it to be playable, but had to turn off some of those graphical elements which you will get in quality mode itself. All in all, from what I've seen of Dying Light 2, I am very happy with it, and it looks gorgeous, which is exactly what I'm after. I really enjoyed Dying Light 1, so if you just give me a new map, new missions, and make it look better, then I'll be more than happy. But if you can expand on all of that and make it even better than the first one, then I'll be a very happy chap. I can't wait till February the 4th for this one. I'm just hoping that this isn't another Cyberpunk where it lets everyone down. February is shaping up to be a very busy month, with Horizon Forbidden West also due out in the same time frame as Dying Light, and this week it's released a story trailer. Now, unfortunately, this isn't one I'll be able to play because it's a PlayStation exclusive. Thanks, Sony. But all in all, from what I've seen of the trailers and everything else, it looks to be shaping up to be a very good game, just like the first one. Indeed, if you like the first game, odds are I think you will like this one as well. Although I do say I think what they've done to Aloy is a disaster. I don't know what they've done to that character model, but she looks nowhere near as good as she did in the first game. In fact, after the changes to her character model, I think she would be well within her rights to make claims that a certain G4 TV presenter had been making recently. She just doesn't look as good as she did in the previous games. Bloomberg has reported that Activision is having high-level talks about whether Call of Duty should remain an annual release, and honestly, I think everybody agrees this is a good idea. You only have to look at Vanguard, and I really like Vanguard multiplayer, but it's not a flinch game. It really isn't. Not only has it had multiple problems when it comes to Warzone integration, but its zombie mode is awful. It had no time put into it, it had no energy put into it, it was just slung up and it wasn't cared about. And if it had extra development time, then all that could have been fixed. Obviously, there just isn't enough time in a year and there isn't enough development studios to make a game annually. But if it's biannually, then that could be entirely different and we could get an altogether more quality game, and it could revive the sales, because Vanguard, as much as I like the multiplayer, lots of people never even bought the game because you just get tired. This happened to me with Assassin's Creed. I liked Assassin's Creed and I kept buying them until I just got bored of having a new one every year and I stopped, and honestly, I never went back. So while Call of Duty slowing its release schedule could actually greatly improve the game, they've also then got to actually convince players to give it another try again, which is always more difficult than getting them to buy a game that they're into some kind of regular purchasing schedule with. Although that might be alleviated if they can keep Warzone going by having them already in the Call of Duty bubble. It's worth noting as well that these talks are being held by Activision, which is still a separate company, and Microsoft doesn't seem to actually have that much to do with it. Well, a lot of people are talking about that with regards to the purchase. That doesn't go through until 2023, and the talks are already going on now when they're two totally separate companies. So this will be interesting to see how this plays out for Call of Duty, especially when you've got Microsoft buyout in the future, which will alleviate some of the tension that they've got there from needing to constantly roll out another Call of Duty to support a stock price, because when it comes to Microsoft, they've got a whole other plethora of products which will help keep that afloat, even if Call of Duty doesn't roll out every year. Earlier this week, Battlefield 2042 caused outrage. Again, it seems to be something that it's just done and kept doing since launch, but this time it was the result of Tom Henderson talking about how they were really disappointed with how Battlefield 2042 actually was, and let's face it, you can understand why. It's currently sitting at 135 on the Steam charts, and this actually puts it below Mountain Blade Warband, which is a 12-year-old game, so it's definitely not doing well when it comes to player attention. But apparently EA is looking at all of the options when it comes to the title, and that's including making it free to play. And obviously people weren't happy about that because they'd actually played it. Now, there are rumors that Steam was just refunding anyone that asked, but there's a lot of people that have paid a lot of money for this game, only to find that, it's going to go free to play just a few months afterwards? It seems like insanity. And let's face it, and I know from personal experience with Battlefield 5, once you've decided that you're not going to play a game, even if it's fixed, it's very hard to make you go back. I've still not played Battlefield 5, even though I've heard it's vastly improved from where it was at launch. And Battlefield 2042 is going to have the same issues. All the people didn't like it, they're going to struggle to get them back, even if they now fix all of the problems. So this isn't just some simple solution. You can't just make it free to play and suddenly think you're going to have players. This is going to require a significant amount of effort to fix the game and fix any perceived issues with the game, and then possibly make some kind of free-to-play element, whether that's in Portal or whatever else that they're looking at. But all in all, if EA thinks that this is going to be a simple solution that they can just turn on and fix everything, that they are sorely mistaken. So I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on Battlefield 2042 in the future, because while I enjoy the game, I have issues myself with things sort of the map size and just the sheer amount of empty open space that does nothing. But I haven't experienced the problems with bugs or crashing that a lot of other people have been complaining about, so I've been rather lucky on that front. But if anything, I think that makes EA's job more difficult. You can't just fix some bugs and suddenly the game's great. I actually think there's core problems with the map design that need to be significantly overhauled and changed before anyone will even stand a chance, even if they don't have any problems like bugs or FPS or anything else. So I'll be keeping an eye on this one. I'm very interested in it, but honestly, when you've lost this much of the population, I think they're going to really struggle to get it back. It's doable. Rainbow Six Siege has done it in the past and proven that it can be done. But whether EA can pull it off or whether they can just even be bothered to put in the effort, that remains to be seen. Have you ever looked at a mobile game and thought, I wish I could play that on PC? Because, well, it's definitely been possible before through things like BlueStacks. Now Google thinks you want to play it on there natively. Using the Windows 11 update, which has an Android app player implemented into it, Google is bringing a native player to the platform. And while this is currently limited in a beta to Hong Kong, South Korea, and Taiwan, no doubt it will eventually be rolled out everywhere. Although I think we can tell that from the beta territories, this isn't really something aimed at the Western market, and I would imagine that the mobile market is far larger in those areas. And no doubt this will be a boost to any sort of weaker PCs that might be around in those areas that can't necessarily play the latest titles. But for now, that's it from me. If you like the video, press like and subscribe. More videos like this in the future, and let me know what you thought of any of the topics down below. But for now, that's it from me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.